I've never been the type to like silence. I grew up learning that silence was dangerous, not because he was hiding something, but because he made everything that was hidden easier to hear. The thoughts, the ancient screams, the souvenirs. Maybe that's why I avoided the cabin for so long. My name is Nathan Lowell, and I am the only son of a man who got lost in his own head, or who, depending on his faith in the impossible, perhaps saw something none of us should see. My father, Benjamin Lowell, died a little over 3 weeks ago. The medical report was short and cold heart attack, but the local sheriff, a man named Doug with tired eyes and the constant smell of cigarettes, called me personally. He said they found my father lying on the porch of the cabin, surrounded by empty bottles, torn out pages, and symbols carved into the walls. And he said more, that my father's eyes were open, looking at the trees, as if he was waiting for something to come out of there. I didn't intend to go back. That cabin was my home for 9 years, until my mother couldn't take it anymore and ran away with what she could put in the car. He took me along, and my father never objected. Maybe because at that point he was already too far away, not from us, but from himself. Still, something in me wanted to come back, not out of nostalgia, and even less out of some kind of poetic closure. It was more like a mental itch, an urgency that started right after the sheriff's call and only got worse every time I tried to ignore it. So there I went, 32 years old, heading back to the middle of a forgotten forest in Wyoming, where cell phone reception doesn't even reach. The road there was, as I remembered, narrow, uneven, surrounded by trees that seemed to lean a little more than normal. One of my Jeep's tires almost got stuck in the mud near the bend in the creek, and for a moment I considered turning back. But then I saw the rusty sign with the name Lowell nailed crookedly to the wooden gate, and everything that came after was automatic, like an old script that my body still remembered, even if my head had blacked out. The cabin seemed smaller than it had been in childhood. The windows were boarded up, the front door was half sunken, with claw marks or maybe just animal scratches, I tried to convince myself. The air had a thick smell, damp wood, ancient dust, something more metallic, maybe rust, maybe blood, and I swear, as soon as I walked in, I had the feeling that someone had just left. Not someone, something. The diary, of course, I found on the second day. It was hidden under a loose board on the floor of my father's old room. It was a thick notebook, the leather cover stained with the word protection written in red pen on the first page, and then everything started to go wrong. The first note seemed rational, obsessive, yes, but coherent. They move at night, never leave food outside. The smell of blood attracts. Things that seemed straight out of a paranoid survival manual. But then the words became shaky, the lyrics changed, and the tone, my God, the tone. The boy is different. He heard their voices yesterday. He pretended it was a dream. His eyes get darker when the sun goes down. I closed the diary. I played far, but I picked it up again at night. Something in me needed to know, because I was also hearing things. On the third day, while trying to fix the generator, I heard footsteps in the woods, slow, heavy, like bare feet sinking into wet earth. On the fourth day, I saw footprints around the house, huge, 3 fingers, claws, and on the fifth, I started dreaming about trees, always the same, twisted, black, and a figure calling me back, a tall figure with eyes like mine. I closed the diary. I played far, but I picked it up again at night. Something in me needed to know, because I was also hearing things. On the third day, while trying to fix the generator, I heard footsteps in the woods, slow, heavy, like bare feet sinking into wet earth. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't the random snapping of branches in the wind. It was rhythm, one step, then another, and one more, stopping, listening to me. On the fourth day, I saw footprints around the house. They were big, bigger than anything I've ever seen in my life. 3 fingers, curved claws. The first thing that came to mind was a bear, but no bear leaves such symmetrical footprints, and they went in a circle around the cabin, as if they were waiting. I tried to laugh it off, convincing myself that I was tired, impressed, maybe a little drunker than I should have been. Yes, I had found the man's secret wine cellar, old man in the tool cabinet. But with each passing night, the laughter became weaker and the dreams clearer. On the 5th day, I dreamed of trees. They looked the same as always, but there was something wrong about them. The canopies were too dense, as if braided together, and the roots, they moved, they cheered. They pulsed beneath the ground, and in the center of the forest, where the light was darker than shadow, there was a figure, high, property. There was something human about it, but it wasn't. Skin like wet tree bark, deep set but bright eyes, as if they reflected the fire that I couldn't see. And when she reached out her hand, an immense thin hand with fingers like broken twigs, I didn't run. I didn't scream. I went to her. I knelt down, and she called me back. I woke up sweaty, panting, with a taste of earth in the mouth, literally. When I went to the bathroom, my tongue was dark, my nails dirty with clay. That's when I looked in the mirror and saw it. My eyes weren't right. The iris was darker, almost black, and there was a glow there that wasn't mine. I stared at it for long minutes, trying to convince myself that it was the light, the lack of sleep, the tension, but deep down, I knew. It was familiar, like a childhood memory that shouldn't be there. I went back to the journal that morning looking for answers, for any explanation. The last few pages were covered in scribbles, but there was one in particular, written with force, so angry that the paper tore in places, which left me freezing. He's becoming one of them. The forest called him back. It recognizes him. I tried to protect him, but he already knew. I stared at those words as if they were a mirror. My father. Did he think I was part of this? What did I already know? It didn't make sense. I never wanted to come back here. I never wanted to remember. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I never really forgot. That afternoon I went to the back of the cabin, where the old hunting shed was. It was locked with rusty chains and padlocks. I didn't remember that. I broke down the door with a crowbar and almost threw up. Inside there were dry skins, animal skulls, some that I recognized, others not so much, and an improvised altar in the center, made with intertwined branches, teeth, small bones, and the strangest thing, cutouts of my photos. Me, 5, 6, 7 years old, playing by the campfire, sleeping, eating, observing the trees. There was something at the bottom of that warehouse that paralyzed me. A mirror, old, cracked, covered in dust, and a diary, a second diary, not from my father, signed in my child's handwriting, Book of Visions. It was written on the cover. I leafed through it with trembling fingers. The pages were full of drawings, trees, eyes, misshapen faces. There were dates, descriptions, fragments. They come when the moon is thin. Their noise is like the sound inside your head when you hold your breath. Daddy doesn't see, but they talk to me. I didn't remember any of that. Or maybe he remembered deep down, but I had buried it, hidden, pretended it was imagination, dreams. But now, everything came back, like a fog that dissipates and shows what was always there. And at that moment, in the dark warehouse, I heard the voice. Clara, inside my head, as if it had always been there, waiting for me to open the right door. You're coming back. You're remembering. You're awakening. I stumbled out. The sky was already getting dark. The trees seemed closer, higher, as if they had grown up during the afternoon. I locked the cabin from the inside, closed the windows, but the air felt thick, as if the forest was compressing itself, breathing with me. I didn't sleep that night, because I heard the steps, again, more than one, surrounding the house, and soft knocks on the wall, like fingers, like claws. The next morning there were marks on the door, like something trying to open up inside, and I had dirt under my nails again. But I didn't remember leaving. My boots were clean, my feet bare. I turned on the generator. I picked up the mirror again, and for the first time I saw my face as it really was. The teeth were more pointed, the pupils vertical, like those of a nocturnal predator, and deep down, something in Me smiled. The next morning I tried to pretend none of this was happening. I tried to sweep the floor, I tried to fix the front door, I tried to make coffee, but the smell sickened me. Too strong, too chemical. My stomach only accepted a bowl of jerky I found in the shed, and by God it slid down my throat as if I'd spent my entire life eating it. It was as if my body was choosing what to accept and rejecting the rest. Even so, I still tried to convince myself that everything was okay, that it was just stress. The morning, forest playing with my senses, the isolation, but there was something in the sounds, a frequency between the branches, as if the forest breathed in an ancient, ancestral rhythm and was pulling me into its rhythm. In the afternoon, I decided to go out, trying to reach the old creek where I used to fish with my dad. Maybe the outdoors would clear his head. Maybe I just wanted to get away from the cabin for a few hours. From myself, I followed somewhat. Faded but familiar trails. The trees seemed bigger than I remembered. More pies closer to each other, as if they were whispering to each other. With each step, the ground felt damper. The darkest land. The smell of sap, moss, rot, and something metallic, stronger. My ears were ringing, and I swear the forest seemed to recognize me. I arrived at the creek, but he was dry. There was no water, just rocks covered in slime, bones of small animals, and a silence so dense it seemed like screaming. It was then that I saw it, the figure, on the other side, between two twisted trees, high, covered in something that looked like skin and bark, with arms that are too long, eyes that sparkled, even in the dim late afternoon light. She didn't move, but he looked at me, and I couldn't run. My legs froze. My heart beat so hard I heard it in the back of my throat. I felt the hairs on my body stand up, but not out of fear, but of recognition. The figure raised one hand, slowly. The gesture was simple, almost human, an invitation, a calling, and something inside me responded. I don't remember going back to the cabin. I only remember the sound, from breathing, from the constant rustling above me, as if big things were in the treetops, watching me, guiding me. When I realized I was already lying on the bedroom floor, panting, my body was shaking. My nails were darker, thicker, like little claws, and my teeth, God, my teeth were changing. The pain was absurd, as if roots were pushing the gum. From the inside out, I cut my tongue when I passed one of the canines. I bled, but the taste of blood calmed me. It gave me focus. My father's diary was open on the table. I didn't remember touching it, and there was something written there, which I swear to all that is holy wasn't there before. Transformation begins with hunger, then through the bones. Eventually, he will forget his name and remember his real one. I threw the diary into the fireplace. I lit the fire with shaking hands. I watched the pages burn, hoping that the part of me that was beginning to grow would burn with them, but it was no use. That night, I had a different dream. It wasn't just forest. It was the cabin. Me, little, sitting on my father's lap. He spoke quietly, as if reading a story, but his words were strange, gutturals, like an ancient language, and I understood every word. When I woke up, I was outside the cabin, naked, dirty, hands covered in dried blood, and all around me, on the ground, were the remains of a deer, scratched, headless. I went back inside like a zombie. I got dressed without thinking. I looked in the mirror and faced what was watching me back. It wasn't my face anymore. It was something between what I was and what I was becoming. And in that moment I understood. It wasn't a curse, it was a return. What my father called protection of the forest was actually containment. He got me out of here before I became one of them. Created fences, symbols, rituals, everything to keep the call away, to keep me human. But something failed, or maybe it would never be possible to stop it. The forest wanted me back, and she was succeeding. Over the next few days, my vision improved. I saw in the dark like never before. My ears picked up sounds hundreds of meters away, and the hunger here was no longer for common food. It was for meat, by blood, by hunting, I started to slowly lose my language. I didn't forget the words, but they lost their meaning. It was as if they were useless, as if the world spoke another language, purer, more instinctive, and I started to understand. At night, I heard their footsteps, the others, those who walked in the trees. Sometimes I saw his eyes among the branches. I felt his presence, and instead of fear, I felt belonging. On the last day, I found my father's shotgun. It was stored in a trunk under the floor, along with a letter, like trembling. If he comes back, and it's too late, don't let it happen again. The gun was loaded, and for a while I thought about using it, point it at his own head and end it before it was too late, before I stopped being Nathan. But my hand was shaking, not out of fear, of resistance, as if something inside me was pulling in the opposite direction, as if my own body sabotaged my will. That night I left the cabin door open, and for the first time, they entered. I left the door open, and the world was silent. Not that common silence, when the wind stops, or the crickets sleep. It was a denser, more alive kind of void, as if the forest was holding its breath, as if the trees were leaning towards the cabin, peering over the shoulder of the night. I sat in my father's armchair, that old deep one, with worn arms and the smell of old sweat, the shotgun in his lap. The fireplace was almost out, and eyes fixed on the open door, waiting, or maybe accepting. I don't know how much time has passed, minutes, hours, but then they entered, not like a noisy crowd, not like movie, monsters. It was subtle, one at a time, soft footsteps like leaves falling on snow. The first was thin, immense. The arms almost reached the floor, grey skin, but alive, as if made of muscle and roots. The eyes, black, endless, and yet glowing with something familiar. He didn't speak, he just looked at me. The second was smaller, or at least more curved. He walked sideways, as if the joints did not belong to the same skeleton. His head hung back, and yet he seemed to be staring at me with his chin. His feet left wet marks on the wooden floor, and he breathed loudly through slits that opened on the side of his neck. Others came. 5, 7, 10. They surrounded the cabin like a silent wake. They looked at me not as predators, but as long-lost brothers, as if they had been waiting for me for years, as if they knew that one time or another I would return. That's when I heard her, out loud, the same as the dream, from the forest, from buried childhood, but now she wasn't just inside my head, it was behind me. You were always part of this, Nathan. I turned slowly. She was there, in the shade between the fireplace and the cellar door, high, imposing, no face, or perhaps several, writhing on the skin as if trying to get out. The eyes were the same ones that looked at me in my dreams, the same ones that looked from behind the trees when I was a child, the same ones that, only now I realized, he tried to take you away from us, she said, approaching. It isolated you. It filled you with fear, guilt, humanity, but the forest doesn't forget. The forest calls back. I took a step back. The shotgun almost slipped out of his hands, but my fingers were stiff, thick, like wood, like claws. You are not Benjamin, she continued. He betrayed us, he killed one of us, he buried the truth, but blood always speaks louder. At that moment, the basement creaked. The sound came from below, serious, far away, like an ancient lament rising through the rafters. And it all came back at once. The memory, me little hiding in the basement, the lights off, the father shouting upstairs, the creature coming through the window, the shot, the blood running down the stairs, the silence afterwards. My father killed one of them, and he locked me down there, alone for 2 days. When my mother came back, I didn't say anything. I never told anyone, but the smell of the blood and the sound stayed with me. You saw him die, didn't you? The voice whispered closer. You saw him kill us, you felt the loss, and yet you came back. She extended her hand. It was a hand of branches and flesh, of bones and earth, and yet she was strangely human. You can resist, Nathan. You can shoot. You can run. But you'll never be just a man again. What's in you has blossomed. My throat burned. My chest hurt. The bones seemed to move under the skin. The senses were on overload. Smells, sounds, heat, cold. The cabin spun, and I saw everything with absurd clarity. The dust floating, the wood expanding, the creatures around me motionless but pulsating, like hearts in the open air. The shotgun was heavy. My hands no longer knew how to hold it properly, and that's when I felt it. A smell, strong, family, gasoline. That came from the basement, so I ran. I stumbled down the steps. Down below, the ground was soaked. Open gallons, and a match, aged but dry. My father had left it there, planned everything. If one day I came back, if one day I became what he feared. It was his last attempt, your last protection. Upstairs steps, they were following me. Not in a hurry, not with violence, but sure. The voice echoed in the walls of my head. You don't have to do this. Just accept it. You're already one of us. I knelt down, hands shaking, teeth grinding, and I saw my reflection in a puddle on the floor. It wasn't me anymore. Or maybe it was the version of me that had always been dormant. The match trembled between his fingers. I could end it all. Burn the hut, the creatures, the forest. Burn me together. End the cycle, or I could accept it. I took a deep breath. The first spark lit up the cellar like thunder, but I didn't light it. I let the match go out in my hand. Slowly, I climbed the stairs. They waited for me in silence. The shadowy figure looked at me tenderly, like a mother, like a root, embracing a seed. I left the shotgun on the floor, and I left the cabin. At first light, I walked with them, barefoot, along the trail that led to the densest part of the forest, where no light touched, where the air was thicker, where time stopped. And for the first time in my life, silence felt right. Now I write this from memory, or impulse. Maybe someone will find this notebook. Maybe someone will come back to the cabin. Maybe you'll hear the footsteps, see the eyes between the branches. If that happens, don't fight, or fight. But know that once called, you will never be the same. The forest remembers, and those who walk in trees always recognize their own. And those who walk in trees always recognize their own